So today I want to show you PantherCap, which is a polyphonic granular sampler and looper I worked on together with the developer of the Path set collections. PantherCap is a part of a collection of 3 commercial modules. So there is PantherCap, there is also Truffles here on the left, and also Hi-Fi. They are all designed to manipulate and process audio in all sorts of ways. There are also 2 modules that are available for free. So there is Truffle and Hi-Fi. But as I mentioned, today we will have a look at PantherCap and we will start with its basic functions. So there are 2 ways you can use PantherCap. Either record audio into it, there is a stereo input, or you can load samples just like I have here. You can see this here on the display. From the right-click menu, you can choose to load the file. By the way, if you record something into PantherCap and you want to save it, you can also save the audio. Right, so now I can run the sample with the run button. Right, I can also set it to loop, and as soon as I click the loop button, it will also start running. Right, and now I can change the length of the loop with this length knob, and you can see this quite clearly on the display. Right, and I can change also the starting point, so from where this loop will start playing with the start knob. No clicks, no pops, no anything. Right, of course, with CV inputs and dedicated attenuators. Right, we can also make this run in reverse. If I activate the flip, there is also a dedicated trigger input. Right, and there is also randomization that will randomize the length, the flip, and the starting point, and this is this section here. So there is a trigger input if you want to use it, there is a button, and then slew and amount. So if I click the button, you will see things are starting to move here on the display. Right, according to the amount of randomization. So if I turn it all the way up, the changes will be quite dramatic. If I take this down a bit, right, you'll get less change. Right, and there is also the slew that will control the transition between the states, right? So all the way to the left, it will just jump between the different states of the parameters, again, length, flip, and start. But I can add some slew to it to transition more smoothly between the different states. Right, I can also use something, for example, like the end of cycle output. This will output a trigger with each end of cycle. So if I use this, for example, to trigger the randomization, it will randomize with each end of cycle and you will get something a bit more glitchy and interesting. Okay, so now I want to show you the granular controls. Let's record something into PantherCap. I have here a piano I can play. So now I can start recording a loop. Right, you can see on the display that it's recording. And the first recording will dictate the maximum length of the loop. And then we can record over it. And this will overwrite what's already there. So for example, if I do something like this, let's wait for it. Right, it will just overwrite as you can see it here. Right, no clicks, no pops, no anything. Right, now there are 4 main controls that control the granular aspect of everything. So there is the time and the pitch controls. And then there is the size and overlap. Right, so this will control the grain size. and how many grains are playing at the same time. This will drastically change the effect and sound, so make sure to experiment with this as well. Now by default, the time control will not change the pitch. It will change the playback speed without changing the pitch. So if I make this, let's take a loop without silence, and then I will take this down a bit. So it will play slower without changing the pitch, right? Or quicker. And again, size and overlap will drastically change the sound and the result. Right? And then we have the pitch control that will only change the pitch without changing the playback speed. Right? So if, for example, I take this down, right, it will play a lower pitch or a higher pitch without changing the playback speed. We can also quantize this knob to octaves. Here there is a small strip that if you click it once, you get quantized to octaves, and this will also quantize the CV input. So if you use modulation and you want the modulation to be quantized to octaves, you can use the quantization. So now right, this will be quantized, and there is another mode that is octaves and fifths. Right, so you can change the playback speed without changing the pitch, and you can change the pitch without changing the playback speed. Now there is also a built-in filter, low pass and high pass, to shape the sound even further, and this filter will work per grain. So it's different than just adding a filter to the output. This filter will process each of the individual grains. Right, so for example, sometimes when you change the time, when you lower the time, you get some artifacts because of how the granular engine works. You can filter them out if you want. Again, per grain. Or just use this as a creative tool. Again, with CV inputs and attenuverters. And again, this will work per grain. Right, now again, as I mentioned before, by default, the time control will not change the pitch. It will change the playback speed without changing the pitch, but there's an option that we can change this, and this will work more or less like a tape machine. So in the right-click menu, time knob affects pitch. Again, by default, it's set to no. If I set this to yes, and for example, now I will enter -1, which will be an octave down. It will play an octave down, but it will also play slower. So something I like doing is take this an octave down or octave up or 2 octaves down with the time control, and then raise the pitch again an octave up. So you get this interesting sound where it's processed an octave down, it's playing slower, but then you push it up an octave with the pitch control, with the granular pitch control. Right, another useful tool here is the width control that will add panning, random panning to the different grains. Right, and again you have the length and starting point. So PantherCap can also be used as a looper, and you can even create synced loops. I have here a kick and a clap, the gate sequencer from Impromptu, sequencing the kick and clap from VCV with some delay on the clap also, just so we have something to keep time. Right, and here I have the FM operator that I can play again with my MIDI keyboard. Right, and of course I can play this also polyphonically and send it directly as a polyphonic signal into PantherCap. Right, so now we can record a free running loop just like we did before. Right, something like this, and then we can set the length and start, just so we have something a bit more in sync. Right, something like this. Right, I can also trigger this with a clock, for example. Right, so if I have here a clock, let's say, and I send this to the run input, I turn off looping. Right, so now the clock will activate and deactivate the running, and you can see that by default it will continue playing from where it stopped. Again, pay attention, no clicks, no pops, no anything. Right, but in the right click menu we can change this to always reset from the start. There is the reset position on run or record. If I change this to yes. Right, and now I can, for example, change the starting point. Right, and find the loop that I like. Right, but I can also record a loop that will be synced with the clock. So let's remove this recording. Again, in the right click menu, I can choose clear sample and reset length and start. So now we can start all over again. I will use a different clock. I will use a clock division of 4 that I have here on clocked, right? And this will go to the clock input of PantherCap, right? And this will mean that the record and run functions will be synced to the clock. They will only be activated when the clock or the incoming signal goes high, right? So everything will be in sync with the clock. So now I can record a loop that again will be synced to this divided clock. It will start with the divided clock and it will stop with the divided clock. So let's do something like this. Right, and now if I set it to loop, need to wait. Change the length. Let's say I want just this one. Right, so now we have a synced loop. Again, it will start recording with the clock, stop recording with the clock, and also the run function will be synced. I have here also a bass. Let me just solo this for a second. So the bass is sequenced by the Turing machine. The voice itself is kick all. I also have some wave shaping and delay. Right, and this is going through PantherCap, and I want to record a synced loop. So I have again a clock here in the clock input of PantherCap. Right, and now when I start recording, it will record with the clock. When I stop recording, it will stop with the clock, and we get perfectly looping loops. Right, if I change the mix all the way right, this is just the wet signal, just the recorded loop. Right, so now we have perfectly in sync loops. If I have also the and I can record more on top of it. Again, this will change what's already there. No clicks, no pops, no anything. Right, and like this I can choose the loops that I want. And as I mentioned in the beginning, PantherCap is also polyphonic, so you can use it to play chords and pads. I have here a sample of a cello playing the note C. And I have the note sec from JW set to polyphony of 4, so it will play chords with 4 notes. So if now I take the volt per octave output of the sequencer, connect this to the pitch input of PantherCap, right, you can see it already turned polyphonic. Now I turn the attenuator all the way to the right, and PantherCap will now follow volt per octave, so basically it will play now chords. Right, it will pitch shift the sample and will play polyphonically. Right, I can use the same clock I'm using for the note sec to run the sample. So now we get different chords, and again this is just one cello sample playing one note, the note C. And everything else is being pitch shifted without changing the playback speed. Right, now if you want to continue processing this audio and you want to get, instead of a polyphonic signal, you want a monophonic signal, there's an option in the right click menu, audio output, you can change this to mono or polyphonic. Right, so if I change this to mono, you still get polyphony, but the audio is being summed into a monophonic stereo channel. Right. There is also an envelope follower that will output the amplitude envelope of the sample. Let's wait for it. Right, with the level control. If you turn this counterclockwise, you get basically the ducking version. So it will start from 10 volts and will go down. Right, so you can use this also for ducking, but the follow output, the envelope follower, can also be polyphonic, so you can get an envelope follower per voice, again in the right click menu, follower output, polyphonic. Right, so now we get an envelope per voice, basically in this case 4 different envelopes. Right, so for example, what I can do, if I turn the audio back into polyphony or polyphonic, I can send this, for example, through a wave shaper. In this case, it's the one from Surge, and then use the envelopes to control the wave shape amount. And this will be, again, in this case, per voice, because also the envelope is polyphonic. Right, and again, we still have the granular controls. So for example, like I showed you before, I like turning the time knob to control also the pitch. Take this an octave down, and then with the pitch control, oh yeah, and then with the pitch control, take this an octave up. Let's wait for it. Right, so now it will play slower, but still the same pitch. And we get a really nice pad from just one cello note. I have here a few more voices. I have here a sort of a glitchy loop with some random modulation. And I have here also a sample of a viola. In this case, it's not playing polyphonically, but still it's following pitch information. Right, so there's much more to explore with PantherCap. We didn't go through everything, but I hope you will enjoy your time exploring it and the other modules in the collection. Thank you again, PathSet, for working on this with me. Thank you for watching. Cheers.